So we've got data being saved, images being uploaded, we've got Auth, we've even got purchases being made with a credit card. And I did it all without writing a single line of code myself, and all in the span of less than 4 hours. So for the first try, I just typed in what I wanted. We're building a marketplace for users to sell digital products. We want to start by displaying products that already exist. Start with the front end. And then, all by itself, it created this entire beautiful site with a ton of different features that sometimes don't work, and also I didn't really want. Like, I don't want categories, I don't want featured, and I want people to pay using tokens, not using dollars. And so I need to be a little bit more specific about what I want. It does have some good ideas on what to do next, but what I really wanted was to remove the features that I didn't want first to simplify this. And so you can see, let's go ahead and restore this version. And you'll see that it removed them from the top nav bar, but this featured button is still here, and that page is still here. And so it didn't do quite as good a job at removing things as I would have liked. And if you look in here at the code changes, this is really cool. They let you see the diff per change, which is different than something you'd get in, for example, Claude projects. You can see that, all right, it took some stuff out of the product type, and it removed some of these uses. So it changed the card, but it's not removing entire pages like we'd want it to. It's just removing the links to those pages sometimes. And it actually, we removed this from the type, and this causes a type error. The build was unsuccessful because these types are still relied on in the stuff it didn't remove. And so it had this error, and there's a nice little button here, try to fix it. And it did fix it, but it just added the types back. So this is not really what we were going for. And one thing you'll learn throughout this video and as you try it is that Vibecoding is a skill, and it's something that benefits from you already having technical knowledge, although it's not completely necessary. So the first lesson in Vibecoding is, just like real coding, you want to start simple with something that works. And so we're going to create a new project and start with just the simplest thing. So I actually mapped out the things that I want it to do. And this is how I would approach a regular project, is doing it step by step. And now we're just telling the computer how to do this. I mean, we were telling the computer how to do it before, but now we're using natural English and typing a lot fewer words. So first, we want to display product listings and do it from a local file and have no feature, no anything else, just the product listings. Then we want to get the products from Supabase, which is a SaaS database, which makes it really easy to work with a backend. Then we want to be able to log in and log out as a user. And that's required for the next thing, where we want to create a product and then assign that product to be as created by that user, and we want to include uploading a cover image. Then we want to allow users to purchase products using tokens. And finally, we want to connect to Stripe to purchase tokens using a credit card. And this is a lot, and this would be more than 4 hours of work, let's say, if you were building this by hand. And as part of being a technical user, I also made a little diagram of what I think the backend would look like. So we've got our users, and then we have products that are created by a user. We have product purchases, which connect to both a product and a user. And then we have token purchases for a user, which is how we record the real money purchases through Stripe. Having a framework like this in your mind can really help the computer stay on track when you're vibe coding, because it'll take care of the details. But like we saw with the first example, if you just tell it to do whatever, it'll make up details and it'll make up a product direction that you don't necessarily agree with. By the way, before we start again, if you want to follow along, I'm using Lovable.dev. So they are another AI vibe coding tool. Their claim to fame is they can connect with a Supabase backend and with Stripe. So you can actually build a real app and not just something in JavaScript like you could with Claude projects, for example. You can also import Figma files, and I'm sure they have other features that I haven't explored yet. By the way, they are sponsoring this video, but I only do sponsorships if I'm allowed to tell the complete truth about the product. And that's nice because the ones with bad products choose not to continue after I say that. And they were like, yes, please say whatever you want. They're very confident in their product and have to say it's pretty good, as you'll see. Okay, so I redid my prompt and now it's pretty simple. It says we're building a marketplace for users to sell digital products. And so this is the exact same as before, but I added and make it simple. I said the product type will be, so I gave it just these 4 keys and what values they'll have. And I said, do not do any categories, filtering, or featured type screens. We just want an index. And I probably could have just said, we just want an index. And so then it did it. So if we expand this, we'll see that, yeah, it has this index. We cannot yet click into it. It took me seriously when I said I just want an index, but it has this nice hover over feature. And this is a better design than I would have done, for sure. And it's even got names that are digital products for the sample data. And if we look at the code here, then we'll see that we have this file, so services product service.ts, where we have all these products. All right, and so the next thing we want to do is I told it to create an individual page for each product. And that is pretty easy. It just did that. And these pages don't look fantastic just because there's not that much information. But that's okay. That's not the most important part right now. And by the way, we can go ahead and look at the code here as well. And there's 2 ways of looking at it. There is raw, where we see all the code that they generated, as well as its thinking. And then there's the diff. And so you can see product details completely new. But in app.tsx, then it will show you what was added and changed. And when they're generating, so you can see in the raw, it's generating the entire thing again. So once your components get large, this does get slower. However, showing the nice diff is really good if you want to be able to understand what it's doing. Of course, if you're completely non-technical, which is the target market that Lovable is going for, then viewing this code doesn't really help you. But as a technical person who just wants to use this to speed up your development, then this is really useful. All right, and so next said to connect to Supabase and get the products from there. And so for that, I had to go and connect to a new product marketplace and hit connect here. And so we can go to our Supabase dashboard. And I'm actually paying more money for Supabase than I am for Lovable for this project. I'm paying like $10 a month to get this database. And when you're here, you can look at your database. And here you can see, here's the schema visualizer, which this is more advanced than we are right now because this is once we're done. And that's okay. And for some reason, this does not connect with user. That's surprising. Anyways, you can look at our tables and you can go to the specific tables and see what they're like. as well as look at the actual table editor and make changes here. And so obviously you wouldn't want to just go making random changes in production, but you can go around and look at your data and, you know what? Let's demonstrate. We can save changes. Oh. There we go. So this is full-fledged database solution. You don't have to know backend in order to be able to do this. You do still want to know the concepts of how database tables connect, but all the little fidgety stuff about setting it up is all abstracted away for you. And they also do auth and storage. So here, storage, you'll see that we have product images. Anyways, we'll get to this in a second, showing how Lovable does it. But this is the magic of how they do the backend. And this is what makes it more powerful than Claude projects or any of the other front-end only builders. So when you're setting up your own project, you'll need to spend a little bit of time setting up Supabase. And there is a gotcha we'll get to later when we get to authentication, but the first part should be pretty easy. And so if we restore this version, then you'll be able to see that, all right, it's restored here and it's basically the exact same. The only difference is we are now getting the code from Supabase. And yeah, we get a bunch of types from Supabase. Don't worry about that. Oh yeah, so this one just connected it to it. And now I had to actually tell it to create the products table and then load it all on the main page. And I've kept it deliberately simple in order to not get a bunch of features that we weren't going to use yet, like filtering, which we can add later. All right, so then when working with Supabase, so it has this SQL that it shows it to you and you have to approve it. And if you are a non-technical person, I'd imagine this would be either scary if you know how databases work a tiny bit, or not scary enough if you are just purely vibe coding and don't know what a database is. And just like, yeah, whatever. So I don't know how I feel about that, but if you're a coder, it's great because you can just basically review their code. And this whole thing is kind of like being an engineering manager with a pretty good dev who works really fast. It's definitely much better than Devin. All right, okay, so there was an error and it had to do with UID format. And so it corrected it automatically because, okay, so it added, so UIDs, they're in hex. And so they should only do numbers and A through F. They added G, H, and I and a bunch of other alphabet characters in the first round, ran it, caught the issue, fixed it, and then it was successful. Boom. All right, and then it ran the script and it updated the application to fetch the stuff from Supabase. And then we restore this and you'll see that, yep, it's got a little loading. Oh wait, no, that loading was for restoring to the earlier version. For this, I think we may have to do this. Okay, yeah. If it doesn't load, just hit refresh page here. Sometimes it's a little, says a little bit of errors there. Not errors, just it gets in a weird state and you got to reload it. Yeah, it's working just like before. And if you look at the code, then, oh, it added the created at because you get that in a good database table. And it removed all of this mock data and instead is just connecting to Supabase. And you don't even really have to understand this. Just know it's connecting to Supabase. And so how I think of it when vibe coding is sometimes this stuff would be in a library. Like, do you understand everything that's in library code? No. But now that library code is in your code base and written just for you. And so a lot of times that's okay if you think of it like that. Other times it might, I don't know, introduce a security flaw or put one of your keys out there. So like, don't fall for the anti-hype people who are like, oh, if you use vibe coding, then people hack your website immediately. but also like maybe read the code a little bit. And how well you need to read the code is a lot of times determined by what part of the code base it's in, what type of code it is, because some are a lot more likely to introduce weird bugs or security flaws than others. And your experience as a programmer should help you understand that so that you can not waste your time looking at, a random React component with mostly UI when you can just, look here and be like, yep, it's good. All right, so we've connected to the backend, and now we want to create the authentication workflows using Supabase. And we set up a profiles table, and in Supabase, the authentication, you don't see it in the table. So you can see here we've got our database that they show, and authenticate. So we have auth.users.id, which all these tables connect to, and auth is handled here. And so you can set up all of this, and we'll show you in a second a setting that you definitely want to change. But yeah, just know that database, you're not going to see the authentication table here. All right, so we have this set up. It does ask us to run the SQL to create profiles. And here, so this I figured out was it auto creates a profile picture, an avatar, and this basically puts in your initials. And so we'll show it here. We'll restore this. Oh, we shouldn't restore this actually because the build was unsuccessful. And okay, here it is. It has BI for my last name. So this is what happens here. I'm pointing this out because this was the part of the SQL code I didn't quite understand and had to look up. All right. And then once again, we see that we can hit try to fix it. And this is great because you don't need to copy and paste in the error. And then you can see that it fixes the error, but then there is another issue. All right, so let's go ahead and restore this, and I'll show you what the issue is. All right, so I'm going to log out, and then you hit login. You see a nice login and register screen. And remember when I used to make an entire hour-and-a-half video showing you how to make one of these? And now it just did it for us. This is pretty cool. All right, so you hit register and you enter your email, and you enter your email, and what it's going to do is it's going to require that you check your email and hit confirm here. However, by default, it's going to send you to localhost 3000, which is not where we are building it. And so how we get to this screen, we go to authentication and URL configuration, and you could paste in what you have there in the Lovable app, or you could just turn off email authentication for now. And for that, you go to sign in, sign up, and you go down here to email, and you turn off confirm email like that. And then you will not need to confirm your email. So you'll want to turn this back on when you actually launch your app. However, when you're testing, you don't really need it. So that is one tip that's going to save you quite a while, because when I was doing this, okay, so first I told it not to use the authentication, take us to localhost, and then it supposedly refactored something, but as you can see, this isn't really changing much. It adds user metadata, but that's not going to do any good. It creates a pseudo email. This did not actually fix the thing. And the reason, oh yeah, and by the way, I just keep on asking it things, and it's still not answering. And none of these changes are actually useful. And so you can see here, I didn't actually fix this through Lovable. So this is a completely separate thing. In between here and here, what I did was I just went and read the Supabase docs, and that's how I fixed the problem. So that is a weakness of Lovable, is when it's doing stuff like this, it's not super integrated with the outside code things that you need to do yet. It has the connection here, but you have to know that you have to go into Supabase and start changing things. It doesn't tell you automatically. Or at least that's what I thought until I reread this. So up here, right after the first one, it has this one sentence. So you do want to actually read this. So it says you might want to disable email verification in the Supabase console. And so it did tell us right before an error. So I've gotten in the habit of when there's an error, I just go and say, try to fix it and ignore everything that came before the error. And that is probably not ideal. And so I would have loved if it had kept saying, if it had recognized that, the things I was complaining about were because of this. But it did actually say it. Anyways, let's log back in so that we can actually use the next feature we're going to build. By the way, to keep you oriented in what we're doing, so we have the first three things completely done. And now we need to do creating a product, purchase products using tokens, and connect to Stripe to purchase tokens. And if you look over here at our chart, we have users and we have products. But we don't have product purchases, token purchase, or any of these connections yet. But even though it only looks like we've made a tiny bit here, we've actually done some of the most complicated stuff, because, getting your backend set up and getting everything connected in Auth is, well, I was about to say it is not trivial, but I mean, it kind of was, because we Vibecoded it. And the reason we could Vibecode it so well is because these are the sort of things that need to happen in every app. And so the closer you are to something that's in every app, the better you are able to Vibecode it, because there's so much more in the training data, and the reinforcement learning has acted on it more. And so the way I think about it, by the way, is, in every app, there's a bunch of random stuff represented by this red. And at the core, there's this nice, unique thing that is only in your app, which I have represented in green. And, a lot of stuff you have to build around that uniqueness to make it palatable, to make it usable. And how I see Vibecoding is, so first how I see frameworks is it shrinks that amount of boilerplate. And then what Vibecoding does is, let's see if I can draw with this. Is this a line? Oh, it's a line. How do I draw? Okay, here's how I draw. The Vibecoding just fills in a bunch of this for you. And so, you spend a lot less time on the stuff you have to write every time, or that's in, 80% of apps, and more time on the stuff that makes your app unique. By the way, this is also why some people, such as Linus Torvalds, are probably not as excited about generative AI and Vibecoding, because what they work on, there's not a whole lot of boilerplate, so it's not nearly as useful for them. Vibecoding a React component, that makes a ton of sense. There's tons of React components, just need to make yours a little bit different to fit your needs. Can you imagine Vibecoding the Linux kernel? No, that would be a horrible idea, at least with the current set of tools. Okay, back to our app. So Nix asked it create a form where a logged in user can upload a product. And then it goes ahead and creates some SQL that I have to approve. And it creates a product images bucket, which allows us to upload images, which is nice. It knew that this is probably something that we would want. Well, okay, actually it definitely knew it because, these are images. And so to upload one of these, you're going to want to supply an image. But it is nice, we can upload our own rather than just put in a URL. All right, and so it did do a price, which is different than what I wanted. So I said, do not add price yet. So we're not going there yet. And so it updates this just to remove the price column. And I hit OK. By the way, I don't type this in every time. There's a button. You hit OK and it types this in for you. And all right, so yeah, there's errors and it fixes it. And I review the new stuff. Obviously, I didn't review the previous version as well as I could have, but yes, this is the nature of Vibecoding. If this was a production app, I probably would have been a little more careful. But all right, so great, successful, and it's created a upload system for logged in users. And let's go ahead and go to that and see how to do it. And we need to hit refresh here. And we hit add product, and there we go. We can put in a name, a description, and a product image. And let's go ahead and yes, we're going to sell a sign-up confirmation. Woo! And we'll hit create product. And then we can see, there it is. It shows up and it is saved. We'll refresh and yeah, it's still there. As you can see by the this is obviously custom. You'll recognize it if you've been watching the channel. All right, so now we have 4 out of the 6 features that we wanted. Next is to purchase a product using tokens. And oh, by the way, we want the product to belong to a creator. Let's go ahead and double check that that happened. So in the migrations, here we can see that, yes, it's uploading there. And we're altering the products table so you can add the user ID, UUID. So we are good. And just to make sure, we could check the code. We could also check here in Supabase. And so we'll go to our actual table editor and go to products. And we're going to go to the newest one. Let's sort by this. Oh, okay. It doesn't sort by that. Anyways, the newest one is signup confirmation. And we can see it does have a user ID. It's the same one as the one I created before. So it is set up correctly to connect the user ID. Okay, so then we'll go with number 5, which is purchase a product using tokens. And so this is, I give it a little more details because I know it will probably not do what I want to do if I just say this, right? So we want the current number of tokens per user stored on the user table, and then the product to have a number of tokens that it costs. Like my suspicion is that if I didn't do this, it would just do this second part. All right, so it adds these to both profiles and products. Great. And after it does that, it goes ahead and implements the product purchase functionality. And this, so if you look at the code, this is not actually what I want. So we're purchasing a product, right? And so there's actually going to be some errors here that we'll see in a second. But yeah, it's called purchase product, and you don't actually, oh, okay, so we do have some of this, but it's just subtracting it. There's no record that actually shows what's being purchased. And interesting, it does have a recommendation to do that. So I didn't read this before because I knew that it was not complete. But if I'd just been reading this, it would have given me the idea to do what I eventually did. All right, so here, we'll notice that, okay, so first it has an error, so we just fix it, and this starts a string of really weird things where it's like, it has a TypeScript error. And I went back and forth with it quite a bit. And let's go ahead and look at this error. So it is product service argument of type string is not assignable to parameter of type never. And here I got pretty stuck because I didn't understand our code because I didn't have to. And so I did actually go and clicked view on GitHub and tried to understand the code. So you can see the gets here, we can the commits here, we can look at the different branches and here, and we can see what it's like at any stage of it. We could actually put this into cursor and start working there. So that is something we can do. And oh, interesting, it reverts here as part of the main branch. So that's interesting. That's probably not something that you want in your main branch if this is production. So yeah, once again, this is better for generating the first part of it and getting a lot of the boilerplate out of the way. They say they have stuff coming for importing code bases, but I wouldn't quite trust it yet with my code base that has a ton of stuff in it. Anyways, so I looked at the code, didn't understand what was wrong, and then I had a bunch of back and forth with it, trying to trace what's happening. And with this product purchase RPC. And eventually I realized, we don't want that. And so after a lot of this, we end up removing purchase product. And yeah, I think this is where we remove it. Nope, they keep thinking it's a TypeScript error, but no, the error is that this just doesn't work. And once again, it's possible it could be made to work. I don't know enough about Supabase RPC functions to know. And so we go back and forth, back and forth. If you've been working with LLMs, you'll recognize this sort of loop where, humans sometimes get into loop like this, but it's harder to get a LLM out of it. And just keep going. And eventually, I say, hey, let's do something completely different. And let's see if this is the one that worked. Yeah. All right, so we remove the RPC and just do this. And we do a direct database transaction. And that is what ends up working. So let's go ahead and restore this. Great, and you can see that we have the tokens assigned now. And let's go ahead and, this is 0 tokens. Well, I don't have an edit function, so we can't change that. Let's go ahead and buy an AI engineering roadmap. We're gonna hit purchase and boom. Now we have 113 tokens left instead of 118. So this is the first time where I really thought, if I'd been non-technical, I don't think I would have been able to figure this out. And so this is one of the limits of Vibecoding is you have to understand what's happening at some level or you are going to get stuck. And then it's so frustrating. So you go in 60 miles an hour, then you just stop and then you're stuck for a long time. And as a programmer, you're kind of used to that. And you develop tricks for getting unstuck. But if you haven't programmed before, this would be super frustrating. Especially when the LLM tells you oh yeah, okay, we fixed it. And then nothing changed. We'll see in a little bit, it keeps telling us we fixed it, but it's changed its comments because anyway, we'll get to that in a second. All right, so now we want to make the product purchases table. So that keeps a record of all products purchased by a user. And so we tell it the user ID and product ID and a purchase price and number of tokens. And we create a new record when a purchase is made. So we're just describing what we want to happen in the workflow. And then it does all of this for us. And so it has an error. And interestingly, we don't tell it to handle the error. We're just like, okay, make a purchase history page. And then it does that and it still has the error. Then we fix the error. So something funny with this error. So it had a duplicate identifier database. And so I kept on trying to find ways to get that to be fixed. And it just kept on erroring. And I was getting pretty frustrated. And eventually I was like, you know what? It still runs. Let's just keep doing things. And, it still has the error, but page still runs. Like, let's hit restore here. And you'll see that. Oh, maybe. Preview. Okay. Oh, right. There we go. Had to exit the code. Okay, so here we can go to our purchase history and we can load the purchase history and it works even though there's this error. And so I just kept rolling and added a link in the header nav bar and started doing purchasing tokens in 4 different pack sizes. And we'll go over that in a second. But first I want to show just this error keeps going and eventually it just disappears and I'm not entirely sure why. And so anyways, that's just part of the experience. Anyways, we can go and demonstrate that this is working. We go to our signup confirmation, we purchase it. Your tokens don't go down, but it does show up in your purchase history. And if we looked here, it would show up in product purchases once we reload it. Right here. All right, our final thing we're adding to this is connecting to Stripe to purchase tokens. And so, like any good software developer, we're going to split this up so that our coder, in this case the LLM, does not get confused. So first, we're going to save token purchases in the database. Each token purchase should have a user ID. So it creates a new table and it gets the price. Oh, actually the price is correct. The amount is the integer. So it actually does this correctly. And it does that. And then if we restore this, it will have a buy tokens page. And it has 4 different tiers from 5 to 100, just like we asked. And we can go ahead and notice we have 113 now. We can purchase. It's like, ooh, we have 118. But we didn't actually pay any real money for that. And so now, say I would like to pay using Stripe. And so it asks you for your API key. In this case, I'm using a test private key. And so it will not, of course, share it with your front end. This test key is being used on the back end. But, this is the type of code you do want to double check and make sure it's good before you ship it to production. All right. And so it does this. Let's go ahead and restore. And I'm going to buy tokens. Buy tokens and go here. And it failed to initiate checkout. And so I tell it that. And it says, okay, we know what the error is. And I'm like, all right, still broken, still broken. And it's doing a lot of error logging, but not fixing it. And so, yeah, we go back and forth. All right, and this is actually where it fixed it, I believe. And so we hit here, and so, oh, right, no checkout URL returned. So it fixed the thing we were doing before. And now we say, okay, use this to go to the checkout page. I had to use the technical knowledge. I believe I looked at the Stripe docs and also at the data it was sending us, open the inspector. And then at some point, it actually fixes it. So right here. But now the checkout page is not displaying correctly. I'll show you what I mean. So we go here. And it looks like this. And so I actually spent a lot of time trying to debug this. And if we go to some of these, then you'll see that it is just changing the comments because it doesn't really know what else to do. It knows that I say it's not working, but its code matches what it thinks it should be. So, if you go to raw, then it generates each of these completely new every time. But the difference is just comments and spacing sometimes. And so what I finally figured out, you got to click this button to open it in a new tab, and then it will actually work. So there was something about it, I think being in an iframe, that was causing it to not work. And so you got to test it out here when you're doing a Stripe checkout page. And so there we go. Like this actually works. And, this is a test key. So there are test credit cards you can use like this one if you actually want to pay. So I went ahead and filled it out and, you need name on card, and it will accept it. And then it shows, all right, we're processing it and we've got a new balance. Excellent. So if we push this to production and put in our real Stripe API key, we could take actual credit cards and do actual payments. And this is all just in Vibecoding. Now, of course, I wouldn't quite necessarily trust Vibecoded payment code, so I'd want to actually read that code myself and maybe feed it to a different LLM as well and ask it if there are any issues it can see. But, it does work. This does work. And so, honestly, I was kind of amazed with how far you could get using just Vibecoding. And so, before we go, I do want to mention some limitations. Like we've talked about them, which is like if you're not technical, a lot of this is going to not be great as an experience. Like it'll be great at first because you're doing so much more than you ever had the power to do. But then you get to a part where you need some technical knowledge to start debugging it, and it'll just be like running into a brick wall. And this will get better, both as the foundation models get better and as teams like Lovable start adding more affordances that can help you get over those gaps. The other limitation is that as your code base gets bigger, then in my experience, LLMs have gotten less good at handling it. And maybe they're doing something different behind the scenes here. I don't know. People are developing techniques to handle this. But in my experience, the bigger the amount of code you have to work with, the lower the quality gets. And this could be a problem sooner if it's entirely Vibecoded because, look at all these UI components. We are not using these. It just put them in there. And code tends to grow faster when you're Vibecoding because the LLMs, specifically models like Claude, which they're probably using because Claude is the best coder right now, then it just really likes to output code. And it's usually correct code, but it will make things that are generally longer than a human might. So let me know in the comments what you'd like to see me Vibecode next or cover next. Go ahead, drop a like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.